Ladies and gentlemen, dear experts, welcome to this CP Training of Trainers course. This sequence is on making a presentation. In this sequence, we're going to cover 3 points. 1, communication, what is it? 2, building your presentation. And 3, what media, how long? The particular context in which any relationship takes place determines the nature and course of that relationship. When speaking in public, making a presentation, for example, the context cannot be overlooked. It is an essential element to take into account in the relationship between trainers and participants. The main components of context are the institutional context that determines roles, the relationship between interacting people, the rules of the game, the setting in which the meeting takes place, including the location and time, culturally specific elements that govern social interactions, such as practices and manners, the nature of the relationship that is underpinned by the objectives we set for ourselves in relation to the communication situation, e.g., to inform, to convince, to comfort, to threaten. Personality, everything that constitutes the person, e.g., personal history, motivation, character, values. These contextual elements affect communication in different ways and to different degrees. What is communication? Communication can be represented in a simplified manner. In a specific context, the intention of a sender is transmitted as a message, then interpreted by a receiver on whom it has an effect. A message is then sent back, feedback. This means that each of the communicators takes over the position of sender and receiver in turn. When a message is transmitted between a sender and a receiver, a number of filters are involved at each end. These filters are made up of several elements of the context, such as education, prejudice, personal experiences. They have a particular role in the coding and decoding system of the sender and the receiver, and thus in the interpretation of the message. A question of place. The relationship between the sender and the receiver is defined through their communication. Our way of communicating expresses the place we wish to occupy and the corresponding place we attribute to the other person. These are reciprocal positions that can be based on similarity or contrast, that is, on equality or difference. The respective place of each is determined according to external elements by the status and role of each person, such as seller and customer, doctor and patient, police and population, colleague to colleague, or by the social identity, e.g., parent and child, male and female. Internal elements of the relationship, the subjective place that each person adopts in relation to the other, e.g., dominant and dominated, claimant and an advisor, seducer and the seduced. This determination of place can be the subject of either agreement, each person recognizes the position assigned to them in this communication, or disagreement, which can lead to conflict. A matter of perception, the effectiveness of communication. We know that in order to get the full meaning of a message, it is useful to consider all the components of communication. But that's not enough. We must be attentive to the fact that a message is always transmitted, verbally or not, in a particular context, and that it is encoded by the sender and decoded by the receiver. The message is therefore interpreted depending on the context. So the intention of the sender may not correspond to the effect on the receiver. The message is misinterpreted. We can distinguish three different levels in a communication. What I think, that's the intention. What I want the message to mean. What am I saying? That is my message. What is understood? The effect, what the other person perceives. Communication is effective when my message matches my intent and has the desired effect. Building your presentation. A lecture is an essential method of public speaking. Speaking in public is to communicate something to someone in context. This particular situation of communication involves two phases: preparation, presentation. Cutting across both of these are the message, that is something, and the audience, to someone. In order to prepare a public presentation, it is necessary to follow a series of steps. Where to start? 1. Define the objective. Formulate the objective to be achieved. This can be broken down into sub-objectives. This should all be precise, achievable, concrete, and positively formulated using active verbs. 2. Choose the perspective and define the content. The information to be transmitted will be defined according to the chosen perspective. That is, the aspect of the subject to be highlighted. The perspective will be chosen based on the objectives, but also on the audience. Choosing a perspective implies defining the content. 3. Determine the essential message. The content of the presentation should always be focused. It is determined by the objective. What are we trying to achieve? But also by the target audience. Who are we going to address? So it is important to identify the characteristics of this particular audience in order to adapt the content. Is it homogeneous in composition? What is its size? What level of subject knowledge do its members have? The key message that we want to convey to the audience should help to articulate ideas and organize the content of our presentation. A presentation is structured in three distinct parts: the introduction, the development, and the conclusion. Each part has specific requirements and issues that must be respected when preparing our message. During preparation, we also need to take account of the timing that will be available and plan the time we can devote to each point. 1. Introduction. You should introduce yourself first. This allows you to situate yourself in relation to the audience and to specify the global context of your presentation. Next, throw out a teaser with the following aims: establish contact with the audience, capture their attention, arouse curiosity, and open up the audience thinking. The content of this teaser should state the essential message. Finally, it is necessary to present the aims, structure, and timing of the presentation. This helps to orient and frame the audience. What do they expect from the presentation? This part of the presentation provides an overview of the topics to be discussed. 2. Development. This corresponds to the body of the presentation. During the presentation, as well as during preparation, trainers should aim to keep the audience attention. Be concrete. Keep interacting with the audience. Involve the audience. Stay within the scope of the objective. The content should be presented in a logical structure. For example, a chronological plan, a thematic plan, a problem solution plan, or a causal plan. Finally, the trainer should present illustrations, examples, questions. 3. The conclusion. The objectives of the conclusion are engaging the audience, make an impression, to promote a privileged moment of contact with the audience, end the presentation. The conclusion should provide a summary of the contents and repeat the essential message or messages. What media and how long? Which media to use? In order to enrich, illustrate, and energize the presentation and facilitate participants' understanding and memorization of information, trainers must choose the most appropriate media to present the information. A wide variety of materials can be used. A board, which could be a blackboard, a green board, or a whiteboard. A flip chart. You can use a meta plan, slideshows, that is the PowerPoint presentation, illustrations in form of diagrams, drawings, and photos, videos, sound recordings, documents, which can be text, tables, or graphs, objects, and yourself. The use of these materials will be presented in detail in other sequences within this training course. How long should my presentation last? Regardless of the composition of the audience, the presenter should be aware that a group's listening and attention span decreases over time and changes in cycles. Rather than designing one long presentation, it is better to divide the materials into segments, which will be followed by exchanges and discussions with the participants, for example, in the form of questions and answers. In the same way, it is better to take several short breaks rather than one long one. The following information can help you to estimate the time required and the duration of each segment. 1. Segments. The number of segments will depend on the context. Each segment, subject or chapter of your presentation should be structured in the following way. The introduction should last to 1 to 5 minutes maximum. It should present a summary. We remember best the first things we see or hear. This is called the primacy effect. Development. Development should last 15 to 30 minutes. This is the main body of the segment, and it should be structured into a maximum of 3 essential points. The conclusion. This should last from 1 to 5 minutes maximum. It should present a summary. We remember best the last things we see or hear. This is called the recency effect. 2. Speaking rate. One helpful indicator is the number of words per minute, WPM. A normal conversation is held at about 200 words per minute. The maximum seems to be 210 words per minute if one wishes to be understood by all. Some people go up to 300 words per minute. For audience recordings, for example, a rate of 150 words per minute is recommended to be clearly audible. For a presentation, the number of words must be related to the trainer's speaking rate. Generally, for a 15-minute presentation, if you speak very slowly, 180 words per minute. If you speak slow, 195 words per minute. Realistic, 210 words per minute. Fast speakers, 225 words per minute. On the basis of your notes, you can estimate the time needed to complete your presentation. How do you calculate your speaking rate? It's very simple. For any digital text, such as in Word or Office, all you have to do is read your text for 1 minute and then use word count function. Review word count. This will tell you the number of words you have read and thus your speech rate in words per minute. Similarly, slideshow in PowerPoints, for example, will take 2 to 3 minutes to present. If you are showing tables, graphs, and diagrams, the time must be doubled. Never show a table or graph without explaining it.